Is the Nikon Z6 still worth it in 2024? I'll let you be the judge. Let's hop right into this review. Hey everybody, welcome back to Run and Gun. I'm JT, and I have the Nikon Z6 with me here, and this is one of my all-time favorite cameras. It is lightweight, it is compact, it is thin, it is small, it literally fits right in your pocket, and you know what they say about small packages. Let's not go there, but good things sometimes do come in small packages, and with a 24.5 megapixel sensor, this thing really packs a punch for its size. Now, a little backstory. I bought my Z6 around 2019, the beginning of 2019. It was released at the end of 2018. Nikon luckily let me borrow a Nikon Z7, which has, I believe, a 45 megapixel sensor, which is huge. 24 is plenty for me. The Z6 was within my budget, coming in right around $2,000, a little bit under $2,000, with the FTZ adapter, so I could use all of my old Nikon glass, and that really just sold it for me. I really needed something when I was living in New York that I could go down to New York City, have something that would just fit in a small backpack, small form factor, lightweight, and I could get really amazing images. And the Z6 really checked all of those off the box for me. Plus, it does 4K video. So the Z6 really did everything that I wanted to, and really still does everything that I want to now. So now that the Z6 is 5 years old, let's take a look at the specs and see how they stand up today. If you want to go ahead and skip the specs, go ahead and just fast forward to the next chapter of the video. So when it comes to photo specs, we said earlier that the Nikon Z6 has a 24.5 megapixel sensor. That is a full frame sensor. That's awesome. This thing weighs just under 1.5 pounds with the battery, so it's super lightweight. That comes out to, I believe, 675 grams. This thing is a little beast in a small package. Again, the form factor is tiny, it's ergonomic, it fits right in your hand, and it feels good in your hand. Now I have a little bit larger hands, so my pinky kind of hangs off the bottom here. Now you can also get a battery grip to slap on the bottom of this, bulk it up a little bit if you have larger hands, and just have that extra grip and extra shutter button, and obviously extra battery life. The Nikon Z6 does 12 frames per second, full frame, has an ISO range of 100 to 51,000. We also have this little 3.2 inch tilting LCD screen on the back, great for tilting, so I can hold my camera up high and see what I'm photographing, or get that down low view, hold my camera nice and low, and I can see what I'm photographing down there. Now it doesn't have the swivel screen, which would be nice for looking at yourself. So I currently am looking at myself on my little HDMI monitor over here, because I can't flip my Z6 around like I can with my GH6 or my GH5 or some other cameras, which would make it very useful for vlogging. So if you're buying the Z6 for vlogging, just know that it's a little bit difficult and you may need an external monitor, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the video specs. Now the Z6 has 273 autofocus points. I think that is plenty. There are some cameras that have more, some cameras that have less, but that's absolutely not something I judge a camera by. If we have like 20 autofocus points, that's going to be more than enough. The Z6 also has a hybrid autofocus system. It uses partial phase detect autofocus and then partial contrast detect focus as well. While we're on the subject of autofocus, the Z6 does have subject tracking. It also allows you to do facial eye tracking, and there's even animal detection autofocus with the new version 3.0 firmware update. This camera also has in-body stabilization, so the sensor actually helps stabilize your image in conjunction with the lens. I believe it's up to 5 stops when you are using Nikon Z lenses, and roughly 3 stops when you're using regular old Nikon F-mount lenses. And I think it's important to add that now that this camera has been out for 5 years and Nikon has the Z9, the Z8, the Z7, the Z6, the Z5, the Z30, the ZFC, and a whole bunch of other Z cameras, Nikon has really expanded their line of lenses, so there are a ton of these Z mount lenses available. There weren't a ton when I initially purchased the camera, that's why I also bought the FTZ adapter, but now there is a plethora of lenses, and pretty much whatever you need, Nikon has available in the Z mount. And just to wrap up the photo specs, this also has silent shooting, which is great for shooting quieter events, or if you don't want to be heard with a giant shutter clapping around, the electronic shutter works great. There is some rolling shutter, so I wouldn't be shooting a sports game with your silent mode on. Save that for a little bit slower paced action. Usually if you need to be quiet, things aren't going too quickly. The other thing I'd like to add about the Z6 is the weather sealing. I have shot in all sorts of snow and rain and blizzards and dust storms and everything, and to know that all of my components are safely sealed inside of this thing with rubber seals around the edge here and rubber seals around the edge, and everything's closed up in the battery compartment as well. We have everything sealed up nicely. I know my components are safe away from the elements, and the Z6 can make a pretty darn good landscape camera or street photography if it starts pouring rain like it does every time when I'm in New York City. It just starts pouring rain all the time. So let's quickly go over video specs. I bought this camera in addition to taking still photos for the video quality. The video quality on this is fantastic. The low light is pretty darn good as well. It shoots 4K, which is awesome. Shoots 4K 30 frames per second, 25 frames per second, and the lovely cinematic 24 frames per second. It also shoots up to 120 frames per second in full HD or 1920 by 1080. So if you want to get some fun slow-mo with the Z6, you can absolutely do that at 1920 by 1080. It's not perfect, and it kind of looks not great in low light. I'll be completely honest with you. The compression really hurts the video quality in full HD when you're shooting 120 frames per second, but it is an absolutely cool feature just to have with you just in case. The Z6 also has the option of shooting HDMI out, so there is a mini HDMI here out that you can run to, for example, a recorder, an external recorder, and you can record N-Log, which is Nikon's version of log. I just really wish you could do that internally. Unfortunately, you have to run an HDMI cable out, record with an external recording device. That's an extra cost, also an extra cost for the hard drives to record on. And I just really wish that was an internal feature. Also, the ability to record in ProRes and RAW if you do a little $200 update that Nikon has available now. You ship your camera to Nikon, they get a hold of your camera, they personally install some new firmware and some other goodies in your camera, and you get it back like a week or so later. But now your camera has the ability to shoot RAW ProRes in log, and I think that's really awesome. I may give that a try. I think it's worth the $200. But again, I really just wish we had internal N-Log recording like I can do with the GH6, which is recording this video right now. So what is the Z6 good for? Who is it good for? And should you pick one up? Well, if you're a landscape photographer and you hate carrying heavy things for a long distance, the Z6 is a great camera to jam in a small bag, maybe a little over the shoulder bag, and it's not gonna weigh a ton. What's gonna weigh a lot more is the lenses you take with you. Let's say you're a street photographer, you want a small compact camera body that fits, say, in your pocket, or you don't want it to be super conspicuous and, you know, attracting a lot of the wrong kind of attention. The Z6 looks small, inconspicuous, you can tuck it away quickly, and it's not that heavy. Again, with street photography, what's going to be heavier is probably your lenses. Also, a great portrait photography lens. Slap one of my favorite lenses on here, the 50mm 1.4 Nifty 50, or maybe an 85mm 1.4, and you're going to get some fantastic low light quality, some fantastic bokeh, shallow depth of field portraits, which we all know and love. And the Z6 is absolutely great for that. The quality of this sensor, I'm floored by every single time I shoot with it. Absolutely phenomenal quality. So fun to shoot with this camera because, again, it's so small. I am surprised every time I shoot with it at the quality of the images that come out of the Z6. So again, it works great for weddings, for portraits, for landscape, for street photography, for just about anything you can throw at the Z6. It will chew it up and it will spit out some great imagery. And that includes video as well. There's not really anything that I've thrown at the Z6 that it hasn't been able to do. Now, I will say one of the cons, again, is the limited frame rates compared to some of the options you have today. It is slightly older technology. You have things like the Panasonic GH6, which can shoot 4K 120. That would be amazing to have in this. And honestly, if I hold up the GH6 to my Z6, they're pretty darn close to the same size, packed into the same kind of form factor. Z6 is a tiny bit bigger, has some extra fans to keep it cool because it can shoot those frame rates, but the Z6 kicks ass and it takes names. So if you're looking for a small, compact, lightweight body that takes amazing images and something that you can shoot short films with as well, the Z6 is a killer little camera, and I think Nikon really brought the game when they made the Z6. That being said, I think Nikon has taken some steps forward with some of their other cameras like the Z9. Again, now we're getting bigger. As you add features and other things, your form factor starts to get bigger. So the Nikon Z6 kind of sits in that sweet spot of having a lot of features, awesome 4K video, awesome 24.5 megapixel imagery, full frame sensor, and you're getting it in, again, I can't stress enough, this tiny form factor. So is the Z6 right for you? It might be. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Nikon Z line and specifically one of my favorite cameras, the Nikon Z6. I appreciate you joining me this week for this Nikon Z6 4-5 years later look. And is it still a good camera? Absolutely. I really don't think you had to wait for this whole review to know that I think this is still a great camera. I still shoot with this professionally today. I think it's fantastic. I can't wait for my next New York City trip to have a little reunion of my Z6 back in New York City soon, maybe to see some fall colors. So until next time, I hope you guys get out there, go shoot, take some amazing images. Also, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.